Here we go. So, hi everyone. Yes, my name is Katie Leeson and I'm Managing Director of Social Chain UK. Absolute pleasure to be here today, and I'm super excited to talk to you about this. I'm so passionate about making sure that the narrative on social isn't just all negative, and what we see isn't all a negative topic around social media and how we use it and how young people use it. So I'm going to jump straight in, and also at the end I have a link to a questionnaire that I would love your replies on, because I'm trying to do a bit more with this than just talk. So I'll get going. For me, too many adults towards youth on the topic of social media are like travel agents. They've never been to the destination before, but will happily tell you to go there, what to do or what not to do. And young people need adults to be more like tour guides, people who know the terrain, what machete to use in which part of the jungle, adults who know the terrain and know how to manage it. And it's all very well adults telling kids what not to do when it comes to social media, but who is it that's modelling to them what to do and how to do it well? And there's plenty of opportunity to grow knowledge, connection, opportunity, create change via a healthy use of social media. And I'm sure many of you have put your kids onto Joe Wicks, which was obviously on YouTube, which is a form of social media, and even did it with them. So I'm going to just click onto the next slide. There we go. And I said before, like, social media gets a lot of blame for perpetuating the theory of comparison culture. But social comparison theory was first proposed in 1954 by a psychologist, Leon Festinger, and suggested that people have an innate drive to evaluate themselves often in comparison to others. So people making all kinds of judgments about themselves, and one of the key ways that we do that is through social comparison or analysing the self in relation to others. So it's always been around, and it's been a way that we have managed to really keep, it's a way that we've managed to evaluate ourselves and keep growing and developing. So click onto the next slide. Can I do this, or is it something? Right, okay, brilliant, thanks. Sorry, having technical problems there. And comparison can kill, but mainly when it triggers shame-related responses in the mind. And that is more a personal, intrinsic factor and can't just be pinned on social media, but it has a lot to do with the individual. Comparison culture can be actually about mentorship and encouragement to grow more, as I said before, better yourself and a step into your purpose. And there's so much on social media that I run into that builds people up and helps them find their inner value, which can be shame protective and motivational for neurobiological reasons. For many, social media is seen as the downfall of the next generation, and adults think social media is bad. You've got to be careful if you do fall into that narrative, because falling into the confirmation bias. There's loads of biases that are skewing perception and memory, and the human mind has a tendency to notice evidence that confirms your pre-existing belief and discount counter evidence. So I'm hoping today that I can give you a few other tips that will lead you into thinking slightly differently, and that confirmation bias will disappear. Because 95% of the online population use social media, so it's not actually going to go anywhere. We are stuck with it, and I think we need to be thinking about how to use it better. I think we all think sometimes that confirmation bias is something like you see a couple at dinner and then you presume that social media is degrading society if they're sat on their phones, but it's not necessarily the case. So we need to figure out a really good way of using it to our advantage. Sorry. So what do we do? First, we need to understand that a teenage brain is actually very different to an adult brain, and there's different ways that it works. And I found this so fascinating when I started looking at it. It's actually more impulsive. It displays high risk behavior, and it's excited by the reward rather than the consequence. It is developing. This dynamic state of neurobiology has an impact on personality formation, learning, social interactions, and the mental laws on how you see the world, people, and relationships. So we know that now that the teenage brain is very different to an adult brain, and the actual opportunity with a teenage brain is huge. Their hippocampus, which is their learning hub, is primed for tremendous learning opportunities. And a brain at childhood stage has more connections than it does when it's at adult stage. So we're at that point where we can get all of our good learning in. We've got so much neuro infrastructure for it, and a good use of social media at this point can actually help build people as they get older. And there's something called the Heckman equation that shows that young people you invest in through their life and their mental well-being as a child, the greater the financial return on investment you get in society. So young people who are more invested in as a child get better social contributions, better jobs, there's less crime, less economic drain, etc. So we've got to consider that. We also don't have a choice, and I think this is the big thing to remember. As I said, 95% of the online population are actually using social media. We don't have a choice on whether we do social media, but the question is how we do it. And I'm hoping today that I can give you some tips on how to do it better and how to use it to fuel those learning opportunities in young people. The areas that I want to do that in is talking to you about how social media can be a facilitator for growth and well-being. The first area is knowing your values to create a space that you want to be part of. The second is all around self-comparison as a survival guide. And the third is you controlling it, not it controlling you. So what do I mean by knowing your values? Social actually is a space that you design, and you're creating your own experience on social media. So don't know if you know this, but the social media algorithms are designed to show you more of the types that you connect or have engaged with, searched for, or commented on. So if you're spending all the time looking at things that make you sad, compare you to other people, or aren't fulfilling your life, you can actually change that. It's not social media that's fueling that to you. It's actually your behavior that it's actually learning from and developing more for you. So how do you do that? Your social media experiences of your own making. And the good news is we're seeing a shift in the reason that people are using social media in a post-pandemic world. Up until 2019, there was a huge use of social media for content consumption and entertainment purposes. But as we all experienced during the lockdown, we use social media to connect with friends and family and people that we weren't able to see. And thankfully, this has stayed and continued into today. And this is hopefully going to be another main use again for social, not just content consumption. So you can actually build a great connection with other people around the world and people that you might not see that often through social media. But first, one of the big things that I think we need to do is take a step back from social and I think one of the things that young people could really benefit from across their whole lives is understanding their values, because if they understood their individual values, they then wouldn't compare as much against to other people, because your values are very unique to you and they give you that drive to push to be better. And knowing your why means that you can also curate a social media experience that fulfills those values and helps you to grow. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about how to find your values. And I'm not sure if anyone's ever done this exercise before. I only started to think about my values when I started to do my podcast. And it's been so beneficial in me understanding myself and knowing what my drivers are, and also give me a real purpose in how I move things forward. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time just going through this. So this is how you find your values. Here is a list of some of the values topics. And what I'm going to ask you to do is just spend a couple of minutes just reading through them and picking out the ones that resonate the most to you. Don't think too much about it. Don't overthink it. Just pick the ones that you think, yes, that's what really puts the fire in my belly when I think about. So, for example, mine are care, they are humour, they're learning. And those are the things that really excite me and get me going. So I'd like you just to spend a few minutes just writing down from that list, or any that you think that aren't on that list, the ones that really resonate with you. I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. I should really have some background music while I do this.
You can sing us a little song, Katie, if you
I'm not going to, you wouldn't like that. I don't think you'd enjoy that. I'd love to sing It's Coming Home to You.
Maybe we do that at the end of the
yeah. I've been practicing my John Barnes rap this morning.
You really should not have told me that.
I've got it down. Okay, I'll give you another minute and then we'll move on to the next part of it. Okay. So the next thing you do from there is you group them in a way that makes sense to you in a maximum of 5 groups. It's just the words that actually match up to you, doesn't have to be to anyone else. So what makes sense to you personally, and create a maximum of 5 groups. I'll give you a minute for that. And then once you've done that, you then pick the one word out of those groups that actually symbolises the group. So the one that makes the most sense to summarise that entire group. And you pick that out, and that is your value. And then from there, I don't just stop there, because I think what you've got to do is make it actionable. What you do then is you make it a verb, so you can see what it looks like as a core value. So for example, live in freedom, seek opportunities for making a difference, act with mindfulness, promote well-being, multiply happiness. And it all, inputting it in that way, I find that it makes you feel like you're truly living on purpose, which then you can take, and I'll let you do that in your own time, then you can take it to social, and it can help you to grow. So my tips then, once you know your values, when you go on social media, for anybody, adults, children, anyone, is don't post something unless the photo, the caption, the video stands for one or more of those values that you've just identified. And if it feels genuine, it expresses gratitude, then you're on the right track. So use social media as a vehicle for the appreciation of the things that are going well in your life. If you start to follow accounts with the same values and visions as you, the algorithm, as I say, will reward you with more of the same. And then that'll help you grow and learn. TikTok is absolutely an incredible example of this. And one of their key pillars is learn on TikTok. If you start to watch something around a topic that you want to learn more about, the algorithm will feed you on there, and you will actually become really knowledgeable in that space. TikTok are teaching you all about mortgages, life lessons, finance, so many like Excel hacks. There's so much on TikTok that can really help you develop, and I don't think as many people as possible know about that part of TikTok. And then once you do that, your brain will actually release oxytocin, which is the trust hormone, and that happens when you feel part of something, and that helps to stimulate a positive social interaction, which is actually the beauty of social media. All in all, when you do that, it's one step closer to your why. The second part of what I want to talk to you about is self-comparison and your survival guide, because you will come across it. As I said, it's a natural thing. It's been around forever. How do we deal with it when we feel it? So, self-kindness. If your post didn't get as many likes as you'd like, or you've seen someone do something similar and you think, why is that done better? Take a step back and think about what you would say to a friend in the same situation. If they felt the same way you do, what would you say? And we're usually really self-critical of ourselves, and stepping back and thinking about how you would speak to a friend is usually a lot kinder than what you actually say to yourself. These tips have actually come from another psychologist who's really noted down on how you can give yourself a bit of self-compassion. Common humanity is the second. So we accept flaws in everybody else, but again, we're really, really harsh on ourselves. Nobody is perfect. And I think the thing that we really need to hammer home is that the social media feed tends to be the highlight reel of someone's life. People will only post something good. We know it in ourselves. So if we know that we're doing it, we'll know that everyone else is doing it. It's just putting it in that context. And the final thing on self-compassion is mindfulness. So tapping into why we may need the feel to compare. So taking a step back to recognize the feelings and go back to your values that you identified before to really help with that self-comparison. The final thing is, how can we control it and not it control you? And I've got a few tips here that I think will be really useful for you. You're controlling it. You need to switch off and get some sleep. This is the big thing. So my 4 tips on this is: do a quick mental check-in before you log on. How are you feeling? Why are you going on? Are you going on to fulfill your values, or are you just going on to kill some time? Are you going on in the right frame of mind where you're going to see something that's going to trigger you feeling worse about yourself? Really understand the reason why you're going on social media before you do it. Second is set time limits. Make sure that you aren't on there all the time. I've got something on my phone that actually turns all my apps off at a certain time at night, so I'm not on there past a certain time, so I'm not flooding my brain just before I go to sleep. Mute. I know a lot of people don't want to unfollow people that might trigger them, but actually you can use mute, so then people don't know that you're not following them, but you then don't see the stuff that's going to hurt you, upset you, trigger you. You can mute it, and the person on the other end of that profile doesn't actually know you've done it, so it's a really good tip to use. And the fourth one is give yourself a stopping point to make sure you get some sleep. That blue light really does impact your sleep, and if you're not sleeping well, you're not going to be getting up and fulfilling your values. You're not going to feel like you can do your day-to-day as well as you can. So make sure that you put a stopping point on that to make sure you get some sleep. So how can social media be a facilitator for growth and well-being? Knowing your values, for me, is the biggest thing that we can do for the next generation. We know that there is a massive learning opportunity with how their brains are forming. And as adults, we need to be a tour guide. So if we know our values, we can help them understand their values, and also then use social media in a way that can fulfill them. Understanding the ways that we can be self-compassionate instead of comparing ourselves, and taking a step back and knowing why we're going on social media before we log on is a really great way of fulfilling that well-being part of using social. And the final thing that I've talked through is you controlling it, not it controlling you. Because we don't have a choice on whether we do social media. The question is how well we do it. So thank you so much. As I say, I've got a a questionnaire that I'd like to share. So I'm hoping that I can put that in the chat or someone will share that for me. But I'd love to answer any questions in the time that I've got left.